believe it has to be vacant for 2 years before there's no longer negative points. I
can't
worked on this
remember.
particular part of the matrix and thought it was an
Is it
important
2
aspect
years?
of it. I believe it's vacant for 2 years before. Sorry, I should use the mic. Vacant before 2 years before there's no longer a point deduction.
And that's at application time, so that would mean this would still
Have
happen.
they identified what community business benefits they're going after?
They have not. That's typically done later in the process. We haven't had any indication from them about what they're proposing.
It's interesting to not be able to have that as you all talk about impacts, isn't it?
Yeah, we usually have some idea, or it's built into the design based on some of their elements, if they're getting like a
They
green.
They don't have public art.
And I thought that
Yeah,
they had
they
to
don't have
submit an
sustainability.
application. They're submitting and then saying, we'll let you know about this benefits table?
They don't have to do it until the final TRC, I think.
Yeah, or even prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy is usually that's when it's required. And basically, they can't get a CO unless they meet those requirements.
Well, they have to implement by then, but when they come to council, we certainly know. But
This project
before
wouldn't be coming to
entitlement.
council, so
Right.
yeah.
We
So
might want to
when-
tighten that up a little. That's an odd.
Yeah, it's something to consider is maybe sooner is obviously better than later.
For some reason, I had it in my mind that was required for entitlement.
When we asked about the previous hotel, they didn't have theirs all filled out either. We didn't ever have the whole.
Do you remember too, I don't know if y'all were, I mean, we discussed it in this room a lot, but one of the concerns I had about that process was who would decide some of the decisions on that table? Would it be developer-led, staff-led, community input-led? Like, how would they decide?
Depends on who's on planning and zoning, I think.
They
Well,
can
that's what I
they can
mean, like,
decide.
what's the
As to which-
influence there? Because I was always
You mean as
worried.
to which community benefits they are going for? It's always been developers, they submit, these are the ones that we are applying for. And because it's basically we're trying to come up with a use by right, as long as they come up with the right number, the developer submits that.
It just seems like we would need to know that earlier as part of the conversation.
Well, I would think that there should be someone,
Your question more like
maybe
who
some staff
who
that,
decides whether compliant or non-compliant?
well,
No,
staff,
or even
right?
which options on there are
Yeah.
chosen. Like, I think it should be all developer-driven at that
Right.
point. But in some cases, I've heard, well, we heard from so-and-so, they'd like this, and we heard from staff that they'd like this. And I worry about that part of the process. To me, that it's not submitted at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty typical, to be honest, at this point for hotel projects that we don't know the exact makeup of the community
So-
benefits.
So let me make sure I understand.
Yep.
They have to meet community benefits in order to go forward as a hotel, but that's not part of the entitlement process, that's part of the CO process, certificate of occupancy process.
That's my understanding, but I could be wrong in that regard. Usually, by final TRC, they have those numbers pretty well in
Because
place.
I can't get stuff for really ridiculous reasons sometimes. Okay.
I mean, could you really have an entitlement and then be denied a CO because of this? That seems, that seems to be a sticky wicket.
CO is its own, yeah. But, a lot of the community benefits are kind of they're not integral to the design. You don't have to change the design. You
Yeah,
just have
some
to
are
agree
just
to pay
contributions to
into something.
Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
But
Some
You
are,
guys
though.
are about impacts.
Yeah, that's what our role is. We can't
Right,
really
right.
do that until it's after the fact.
Yeah, I don't, like, how do you discuss your impacts if you don't know what they're doing? I mean, that could be green built, it could be money to housing trust fund or reparations, it could be solarized, there's so many things, living wages. And that's really what y'all are, not just that, but what are the impacts to that neighborhood, that street, the
Right.
community, the downtown? It's very interesting. I've made a note of it for future updates.
Mhm.
Does seem like it should be linked to entitlement.
Are we having a problem with recording? Do we need to pause?
All right, some tech problems. And then just to circle back, so I think Andrew was correct that you get negative 20 points if you displace a business place within the previous or projected 24 months. So
24 months?
if there was that existing house building, I don't know if that would be considered a business, it
They're
might not
organized
be.
in some manner. They should be.
But maybe the house structure, if that was occupied, in the previous 24 months based on, I'm not sure exactly what point in time, that they get negative points for that. You get negative 50 points if you demolish a historic structure, and I think that might be,
Historic structure?
I don't know, it might be whether it's listed as a
Yeah,
contributing structure.
it's gotta be either contributing structure
Is
in a
it?
historic district, or it's gotta be on the register.
Is it?
That's the technical definition
Do
for
we know if
historic.
it's a contributing structure?
We can look at it's not part, that specific part of town is not part of the downtown district.
Right.
I'll look it up.
So unless it's a, yeah.
So unless it's on the historic
Standalone.
register itself, or it's a
Which it
local
won't be.
landmark.
It won't be.
It's probably not is the answer, but we'll double check that. All it means is that they have to have additional points to make up for that
Yeah.
deficit that they get dinged on, so to speak.
We've got a bowl of snacks if anybody's getting a little package. Going along with our meeting.
What do we got here? I haven't had a big Newton in a long
Well,
time.
Will, as we continue this discussion, I'm actually having some heartburn over the fact that they don't even have to list their potential community benefits to get entitlement. I just, like, I've got to have flood, I've got to have DOT right away, I've got to have MSD. If I'm grading on a railroad right, there's all these things that I have to have before I can get entitlement on a project. And since that's part of the hotel overlay, I think that could be, now, they can change that. You know, there's other ways, if they come up and they go, hey, we've decided not to do the reparations, we've decided to do the housing fund, they could change that, and it could still be, it's an amendment and it's approved as part of the CO process, but I really think, and I'm talking more as a commissioner, that should be part of entitlement for P and Z.
Yeah.
And I think P and Z is the right place, not necessarily this commission,
Mhm.
but P and Z is the right place for that.
But it would help us, if we knew what was up, it would help us
100%.
understand. I mean, and let's be charitable.
Yep.
It could possibly, make us feel great knowing,
Right.
knowing what they're going to do, it could lead to positive reviews here.
Yeah, I mean, they're dismantling and demolishing a Black historic church. I'd like to see what they're doing too.
Right.
I
And they're
mean-
going in right beside AHO. I mean, this one's, yeah. anyway.
It's
Yeah,
fascinating
no, it would be
process.
helpful to know. Sometimes folks have an idea and they'll present it, and it still
I know,
could change a
yeah.
lot
I
throughout the
know.
process. They'll say they're doing green globe, and then they realize
But
the
may not
cost
have
of
been done
doing
20 years ago.
whatever
You know,
aspect of
that
that
might
is
be
too
current circumstances
prohibitive, so they
for a
do
long
public
time.
art instead. So it can shift, but it's good to have an
It
idea.
can shift, but they can have an
Yep.
idea. I mean, as long,
Yeah.
I have to have strategies for
That's what I
all
mean.
kinds of things.
Right.
To get entitlement, then we get into the project like, ooh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Suddenly I need a
I mean, it's their
retaining
decision.
wall, I need something different.
Right.
And there's a process to go through changing your plans,
Yep.
but
I think usually by final TRC, we have that information in hand. I think that's typically when we get it. I think the CO is like the final drop dead. That
which is fine.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to drop the money into the account until,
Right. Right.
until CO if they're doing a reparations fund,
Mhm.
or whatever they're doing. But they should have that box checked before it goes to P and Z to get entitlement. That's my take.
I guess the concern would be then if, through the final design, if things change, would they have to go back to planning and zoning to change their allocation of points?
It depends on, that's a good question. As long as their points don't drop below, they should have the option.
Mhm.
I don't have to go back through P and Z for entitlement if I have to change my landscape plan.
No.
I'm still meeting the landscape plan,
Right.
but I can't have for whatever reason, I can't put these trees here.
Right.
I have to change the tree mix. We have to change the canopy preservation plan because this one got killed. Somebody backed a bulldozer over it.
Right.
Real things. And right, so you go, but I don't have to go
No,
back
not
through P and Z.
typically,
That's
yeah.
that's a staff decision.
Yeah, we had a hotel project come back to, like, the Create 72 Broadway project, had to return to planning and zoning because it changed the mix count within the
Well,
building.
But see, that's different.
And yeah, it's different. So those things had to come back and it is ministerial site plan review for these level twos. It's not
That's
it's not a
right.
legislative review. So it is more just confirming that the zoning is adhered to, and the public
Exactly.
benefits is part of the zoning,
Public
so
benefits part
I
of the
definitely see
zoning.
the logic there.
So that,
Yeah.
but they should have we're doing these things, just
Mhm.
like, I gotta meet stormwater quality, quantity control.
Yep.
And I get in the project and I can't put the storm tech where I thought I could, I have to do something different. But I don't have to go back through P and Z, but I have to show that to get entitled.